Hello everyone, my name's Fatima and welcome back to the Race Edit. And if you're new here, welcome to the Race Edit, the Mexican Grand Prix. Now you guys, first and foremost, I know I said I wasn't going to be doing any more race weekend recaps, but listen, yeah, it was kind of a good race. I enjoyed today's race, so therefore I'm recording a race weekend recap, and because I just have some things that I want to say and I need to get it off my chest, so bear with me as I make this video. Also, we had a Ferrari win today and I'm wearing my Ferrari cap. Now, this cap is making me mad because I have a random stain on it and I don't know how I got it. It's a new cap and I don't know how to get rid of it. So, yay! Now, I have my handy dandy notes on my phone here, so if you see me looking down, that means I'm looking at my notes. The Mexican Grand Prix. You know what? I actually went into this race with pretty much no expectations. I was just like, whatever happens, happens, and I'm okay with that, to be honest. And I think I'm quite happy with how the race went today. First of all, I'll get into Ferrari when I get into Ferrari towards the end, but like, two race weekends in a row where we have a Ferrari win, it feels like, and I don't want to say too much into this because you know it's Ferrari. It feels like they're doing what McLaren did last year, except the reverse because McLaren bought their upgrade packages last year, and after when was it? It wasn't after Miami, was it? I can't remember when McLaren. It was after the summer break. I can't remember when McLaren brought their package, but they brought in that package and they've been smooth sailings ever since, up until now. And Ferrari has not brought in an update. I don't think they brought in any updates this weekend either. And you know what? Things are looking. But that's all I'm gonna say about that. Shout out to Fred Vasseur. Please keep it coming. I don't want to say anything more about Ferrari yet. I will speak on the Sainz win later on in this video, of course, but I don't want to say anything more about Ferrari yet because I just need things to go extremely well for that team, especially leading on to next year. I need things to go well. So Ferrari, keep it up. You know? Now let's talk about this race. Let's talk about what the heck transpired this race because I just felt like we were getting choo 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 all over. And I was like, dude, what's going on in Mexico? Also, the Mexican Grand Prix is just beautiful. I don't care what anyone says. I enjoy the Mexican Grand Prix. I think just everything about it is just wonderful, and they really don't play about Checo over there, but we'll talk about him in a minute too. Now, let's talk about turn one. Let's talk about the crash between Sonoda and Albon. So, Sonoda and Albon, as we know in turn one, both had contact, resulting in both of them DNFing from the race. It's just been a terrible race weekend for Sonoda. Last weekend was also terrible for Sonoda. This last weekend was terrible for Albon. This weekend's terrible for Albon. I just like, who jinxed them? What's going on here? You get some new rookies in Formula One, and then the old dogs are starting to go all over the place. But yeah, that was just not. It was deemed as a racing incident, which honestly I get because turn one incidents typically are deemed as a racing incident. Everyone's trying to make the move, and sometimes they stick, sometimes they don't. And in this case, Yuki's move, unfortunately, didn't land, and that resulted in him crashing into him and Albon having contact. And also, I'm pretty sure Gasly also had contact between this two because Tsunoda tried to make the move, and then Albon had nowhere else to go, and Gasly was right because Gasly was right there. And then when Tsunoda's wheel came off, I don't know. There was contact. I have to go back and rewatch and see how Gasly got hit, but there was contact, and that also resulted in Gasly kind of having some tough luck throughout the race too, unfortunately, right? Especially for the Alpine that started off so terrible. That's kind of doing all right. So that is the DNFs for Albon and Tsunoda. Then you have Fernando Alonso. Oh, Nando. First of all, 400 Grand Prix is absolutely ridiculous. I just like he has love for the game or he I think it's also one of those things where he has love for the game. He's retired once. He's obviously came back, but it's also one of those things. It's like when he goes this time, whenever he does retire this time, it's actually for good. And it's like your entire life has been this sport. Your entire life has been motorsports. When you leave, you don't. I feel like you just. What is your life after that, right? Especially for someone who's been doing it for 20 years, 20 plus years at this point, I think. 400 Grand Prix, like, that's a scary thing to let go of. I won't lie. Like, and that's something that I've never experienced, but I can imagine how scary it is to let go of. So, yeah, I think he does have love for the game and he really does want to win the third title, but it's also just like, what do you do after this? It's scary. And obviously, on his 400th Grand Prix race entry, he had to retire because that's just Alonso's luck, isn't it? He's such an. He's just so interesting to me, that man. His luck is just. It's something else, isn't it? I think he also retired on his 300th Grand Prix entry as well. So, what can you do, huh? What can you do? But tough luck for Fernando over there. We'll see what happens when Newey comes. Obviously, you guys know I have my thoughts on that, which I've spoken about before, but we will see what happens when Newey goes to Aston Martin. I don't even know if Fernando will even be there by then, because that's 26, and he's I feel like he's getting there, but he also might never leave the sport. He might have to be forced out of Formula One at this point, let's be honest. But yeah, then we go on to, oh boy. Now, I have some thoughts about Sergio Perez and Liam Lawson. First of all, Sergio Perez, oh, it's so weird for me because honestly, sometimes I sit and I think and I wonder if Perez ever regrets going to Red Bull. I genuinely do wonder that. But then I'm also like, was Red Bull the best move for him to make career wise too? Because he's won races under Red Bull. It's built up his stock. It's also, you know, brought down his stock, but it's built it up simultaneously as well. But it's just like the pressure that he must be under. I don't even know. It's tough to watch Perez. It is. Cuz I do want better for him, but like I don't Red Bull's not it. Red Bull's not it, and I think it's hard when I don't think he's not trying. I just think there's a disconnect there, and there's been a disconnect there for a long time now, and that pressure is absolutely crazy. I know that pressure. It's not a fun feeling when I feel like he is trying his best. It's just not good enough, unfortunately. And it sucks because he's had such a long career and he's done great things with that career, and it's not I wouldn't want to leave Formula One if I were Perez under these conditions. And of course, people have left Formula One under worse conditions. I mean, i.e., Daniel Ricciardo left in pretty harsh way, let's be honest. And he was part of the Red Bull family too. But that's not even where we're at. Let's talk about Perez's false start. He was just like it's just he already didn't qualify. He didn't make it past Q1. So that was already his first L. He didn't make it past Q1 on his home race, first and foremost. So he qualifies what? P18, finishes P17, has a false start, then has a 5-second penalty because of the false start, because he was just so far ahead of that grid box. And he was like, no, I wasn't. I had a great start. Yeah, you did, Perez, but at what cost, right? Then he had his little beef with Liam Lawson. Now, this is not a little beef. This is actually a big beef because it's quite a personal beef. Because as we know, the person who is in contention for Perez's seat is Liam Lawson, potentially. Even though there's no official wording about that, that is the rumor that is flying around. And obviously, Red Bull's not doing anything to dim down those rumors. Perez is standing 10 toes down, saying he will be here next year. Liam Lawson feels that he deserves that Red Bull seat. And it's just a mess. And in this, Liam Lawson, on lap 18, we had Perez v Lawson, where they did make contact and there was damage on Perez's car. This was an interesting one because we did see debris come off of Perez's car, but he was still driving fine. But obviously there was some potential damage on his side pod, which we found out later on throughout the race, because I'm pretty sure he made contact with Lawson again at some point. Anyway, for me, personally, the funniest thing about the battle between Perez and Lawson is that they both did all of that. Because I do think Perez and Lawson were both at fault during that battle. I do think that they were both at fault. And the funniest thing to me is they did all of that, yeah? They took each other out, came back on, went offside. Not offside, went off track, gained an advantage, yada, yada, yada. They did all of that just to finish right beside each other. Is that not funny? Now, of course, the reason why Lawson finished right beside Perez is because he had damage later on. But I'm just saying, y'all did all of that just to finish right by each other, especially especially when Lawson finally got ahead of Perez and gave him the finger as he was passing him by. And then obviously there's that comment that Perez made later on when Lawson had contact with another driver, which I'll get into when I get there. But I just think it's really funny. I think the next few races are going to be quite interesting. P15 we have Zhou. P14 we have Bottas. P13 Ocon. The thing is, these three didn't really do much for me. As you all know, I am a Bottas fan and I really want to see him succeed and I don't want him to leave, but it's been a tough season for Bottas, if we're going to be real. Zhou Guan Yu, it sucks because it does, his time has runneth, you know. I'm so sorry to Zhou, but it feels that way for both of those drivers that I just I would love to see Bottas have one more year in Formula One. I genuinely would. I don't know if that's gonna happen, but honestly, it's an interesting one because let's say this happens. Let's say we know we have a Sauber seat free, and we know we have a V car potentially seat free. So let's say Lawson goes to Red Bull. Okay. Then you have Franco Colapinto and Valtteri Bottas potentially. That leaves Lawson at Red Bull. Let's say Colapinto to V Carb and Bottas stays at Sauber. Obviously, that would mean Perez is out. Out of those four, one driver is going to be out. It's not going to be Lawson. I don't know. I feel like up until he says firmly right now there is no seat for him in Formula One. He's hoping for 26. James Vowles says it's a sensitive situation, sensitive topic, and they're trying to do what they can do. What that tells me is that there is talk happening, in my opinion, right? So yeah, it's just interesting to see what's going to happen because obviously it feels like K Mac is going to be out. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm jumping drivers, but that's just where my brain is at. It's kind of all over the place. That's where I'm standing though with that. So, like I said, P15 Zhou, P14 Bottas, P13 Ocon. Then you have P12, as I was talking about, Franco Colapinto. The thing about Franco to me is he has a lot of gumption, and I like it. I think he genuinely has nothing to lose. It's an interesting one because I feel like he has to walk a fine line. Yes, he has nothing to lose because he's only signed on for this season, but also he has to think about potentially his future in Formula One. May that be 25 or maybe that be 26. So he can't go too crazy, but he also can go crazy at the same time when it comes to making moves. Now, did he have that little with Liam Lawson? Yes. Yes, he did. Did him and Lawson have contact, resulting in Liam Lawson getting damage on his car? Also, yes. I just think, I don't know what it is about this weekend, yeah? I just think the V carbs and the Williams were tethered together. I don't know what it is, but if a Williams was down, a V carb was down. If a V carb was down, a Williams was down. And that was pretty much the weekend for those two teams, really. Don't know why, but Colapinto finished just outside of the points, P12, not bad. I think it's, what is it, his worst weekend in Formula One since he debuted in Formula One? I don't know, my voice went so high. But for a kid who literally came in a couple races ago, he's done pretty well, and this was just not his race, and that's okay. What's gagging me about all of this, though, is Perez' comment to Leo to his engineer about the debris. His engineer was like, "There's debris. There's going to be debris on the ground," and Perez was like, "Oh, was it that idiot or something?" I was like, Liam Lawson is two races into his Formula One career outside of last season, and he's beefing with Alonso. He's beefing with Perez. Who's next? Like. He's beefing with the old heads for some reason. That's just the way the cookie crumbles for him. And it's quite interesting to see who he's having issues with. But I just think it's really funny. I just think it's really funny how Lawson is literally having beef like with these old heads. I mean, him and Perez, their drama is gonna go on for the rest of the season. Let's be honest. Like Lawson was so not happy when he lost his seat. It wasn't even his seat, but Lawson was so not happy last season after he came in to replace Daniel Ricciardo from his injury, and then he didn't get signed. Perez and Ricciardo both got signed. He was very unhappy about that. So I think there's a lot of frustration in him, but I also think let's just bring it back down a little bit. I don't know. I it's in. I'm curious to see if this is him or if this is just like the frustration, you know? Because I'm still gauging out Lawson's personality. I don't really know what it is. I mean, I'll never know what it is. I don't know him, but I'm curious to see what his racing personality is like because I felt it was quite something today. But hey, that could also be the perfect fit for Red Bull. Maybe not beside Max Verstappen because we don't need two angry bunnies together. I don't think so. But I'm curious. I'm very curious to see what Liam Lawson's racing personality is like. Alrighty, then we go on to Lance Stroll, P11, Pierre Gasly. He was still in the points, P10, even though he had a rough start. Nico Hulkenberg, P9. Honestly, I think an underrated team, which it's not so underrated because people have been talking about it, but I feel like we should have more noise, is Haas, because they've been doing pretty well this season. This is like an insane run for Haas, by the way. A very insane run for Haas. So I think they're a team that I don't like saying underrated seems silly because everyone's talking about how good they are, but I feel like we should be making more noise about Haas, and we're not. But that's just me. P9 went to Hulkenberg. That means P8 was Oscar Piastri. Now, this wasn't bad weekend for Oscar. I'm not going to lie. What's so crazy about this weekend for Oscar is the narrative. Because he's had a couple of rough race weekends. He has. I can be the person to say that. But it's interesting to see the narratives that are coming out about Piastri. When he didn't make it out of Q1, his first time this season not making out of Q1. Like I said, recency bias in Formula One is crazy. I've said this in one of my TikToks. Oscar doesn't make it a Q1, and he's obviously the worst driver to ever race Formula One. He shouldn't even be racing in Formula One. He's never going to make it as a World Drivers' Champion, which is crazy because a couple races ago we were saying he's that guy. I think he's had to. I think yeah, he's made mistakes in the past few races, but yeah, he's also had to take a step back. Rightfully so, because his teammate is leading him in the championship. He's not going to get up his teammate in the championship. So I think maybe getting being that official number two at this point is quite humbling. It is quite humbling, especially when you thought you were doing pretty well, and that's something that he probably has to mentally get into. And he's not being the best number two because he's not taking points out of Max. He's not, but it's also just like, where does he go from here now? Because I do think Oscar does have what it takes to be a World Drivers champion. I just think he needs. I think 2025 will actually tell us what Oscar can bring to the table when it comes to a championship fight. Like, I don't know if McLaren is going to be in contention next year. This could be their only shot. It really could. Or it could be McLaren v Ferrari next year. I do think next year is really going to tell us where Oscar is going to be. But yeah, so rough weekend for Oscar. Went out Q1, finished the race P8. Obviously, he had his own battles throughout this race. What was funny to me about Oscar in this race is he was actually racing his peers. If we're gonna be honest, he was going through it with the people that he grew up racing against. Let's be real. Like, it was Oscar v Lawson at one point, which really got me going, and not in a good way. Piastri. Oscar is Piastri. Oscar v Colapinto. I'm pretty sure there was that at one point. He was stuck behind Franco for so long. He was over. He's like, mate, you want to pull me out of this? My terrible Australian accent. Don't judge. But he was racing his peers. And when was the last time he did that? And I think, especially next year, with all the new rookies and all his age mates coming in, it's going to be interesting to see who brings it. Let's be real. Who brings it? Because there's something about that McLaren car. It's good in clean air. I mean, as every car is. It's good in clean air. But Oscar was kind of going through it today, wasn't he? When he was in the midfield and he was in the mid pack. And I was eyeing that McLaren. I was like, you're a fast car, but I feel like something's changed. I feel like something shifted in that car. But I'm not saying anything. I'm not. But let's get back to my actual notes here. Yeah, so lap 48, we had Piastri v Colapinto. And in my notes I wrote, I like Colapinto's gumption, because I do. And I jumped one. Lap 34, it was Piastri and Lawson. And this battle made me so annoyed because I was like, you guys need to move out of the way because Hamilton needs to regain the positions he lost when he pit. It was nice to see, but I was also just like, because Oscar was trying to get ahead of Lawson. Lewis was trying to get ahead of both of them too because they were not in the same race. They weren't. And it was just, it was not a fun time until it was a fun time. And yeah, like I said, just not a good weekend for Oscar overall. I think he needs to really sit back and reevaluate some things personally, but it ain't easy being breezy, is it, Oscar Piastri? It's not. And then we have P7, Kevin Magnussen. Listen, I know everyone's saying it's a farewell tour. I want one more year of K-Mag. I do. I like him. It was, what did they say? It was his best points results in 2022. Is that what they said? Yeah. Yeah. I do like K-Mag, and I think, I don't know. But to not have Kevin Magnussen in Formula One was it's gonna be weird, because I do think he's a crazy person on the grid, and I would love to see Kevin Magnussen and Franco Colapinto racing against each other more often, because I think that would be pure entertainment, because neither of them really care, do they? Yeah, like Franco will just send it, and Kevin Magnussen, we already know his terrorist ways. Like, he does not care who he's racing against. He will fight. I mean, as of late, ever since he came back from his race ban, he's been pretty good, pretty clean, which shocked me, because I really thought he was gonna come back and just like be like, you know what, it is what it is. I'm taking you all out with me. And I think if Abu Dhabi is his last race, he needs to go all guns blazing, in my humble opinion. But just don't mess up Lewis Hamilton's race. That's all I have to say about that, right? Okay, moving on to P6. Now, I have a lot to say about P6. I have a lot to say about the driver who got P6, because Max Verstappen is apt. That man is not okay. I said it before. I'll say it again. That man is not okay. If there's one thing, you know what, before I even jump into it, first of all, he's not won a race in 10 races. Shout out to my girl. Y'all already know who I'm talking about. And if you don't, you need to get on Twitter, because she's doing it. She did her thing. She did her big one at that one. But he's not won a race in 10 races. That's already crazy. I said this, I tweeted this, and I'm going to say it again. Red Bull could not have had the season that they had last season and expect to go into 2024 without any consequences. And I'm sitting by that 10 toes down. They won pretty much every single race last season. Like, whatever luck you guys had in your jar, you guys used it all in 2023, and I'm standing by that. They really used all of their luck in 2023, and they played themselves, because they needed some of that for 2024, especially now that teams are catching up. And 2025, I mean, buddy, it's giving P3. They didn't even care about the constructors. They literally do not care. I don't think anyone on that camp cares about the constructors championship. I don't. I genuinely don't. I think they gave up that hope a very long time ago, if we're gonna be real. They were like, we got our 1-2 last year, so we don't need it ever again, pretty much. That's what it feels like to me. But let's get back to Max, because he's absolutely insane. So what happened with Max Verstappen? As we know, he did get the lead, and then after lap 9, Sainz regained his position back. Lap 10 is when things went all guns blazing for Max, because Lando was right behind, and that's when Lando v Max round 2, no, not even round 2, round 3 happened again. So lap 10, Lando tried to go around the outside, and of course, classic Max pushes him off the road. In this, they actually almost took Carlos Sainz out as well, and I was like, y'all need to chill, first of all. Lando did gain the position from this after the fact, but then Verstappen went for the inside, and they both went off. Max very aggressive, as we know, because Max did force him off the road, and in this, that's where Leclerc getting an advantage over Max. Lando then calls Max dangerous, and I was just like, oh, how the tables have turned when it's happening to you, huh? Is that not crazy? Because when a certain driver was going through these things with Max Verstappen, people were so sick of his dominance that they were like, it's just racing. But now that it's happening to you, he's dangerous. He's not good. Everyone is so shocked about his driving skills. No one can believe how dangerous of a driver Max Verstappen is. And I'm just like, he's being like this. Nothing about Max's driving to me has changed. He's just, the only thing that's changed is he has the competition now, because he went smooth sailing for the past 2 years, and now he has competition again, and it's coming back up again. But this time, his competition is not a 7-time world champion. That's the difference. That is the difference. And it's just interesting to me, the narrative. You know? It's just interesting to me, the narrative. But anyway, because of his dangerous driving, he got a 10-second penalty. One for forcing a driver off the road, and I can't remember the second one was. I can't remember. Let's find out. He first received a 10-second time penalty for forcing Lando Norris off track. This was at turn 4. And then he received a second 10-second penalty, and this time was for him leaving the track and gaining a advantage. And honestly, deservedly so, because I think both penalties are deservedly so, because man, Max literally never gets penalties, ever, as we know. And after last week, I don't think the FIA, I don't think they could have, there's just no way they could have gone into today's race and seen what we saw and not have given Max Verstappen a penalty. The funniest thing to me was when they told him about the first penalty, Max was like, that's impressive. And then they were like, on the radio, he was like, that's impressive. And they were like, there's a lot of whinging. And I was like, you guys, no, your driver is crazy and he needs that penalty, because you know what? When you do bad things, you get consequences. That's just it. So on lap 27, Max goes on for his pit stop, and in this is when he did his time, pretty much his 20-second penalty, which was absolutely sorry. Before I even get into that little graphic of the outstanding penalty, what is this mugshot? I can't with Formula One. It's actually a very unserious sport. But back to Max, lap 27, goes in for his pit stop, and also has his 20-second penalty on top of that added. And it was just so insane to see how last year Max was doing pit stops with a 20-second advantage on all the other drivers, and he was getting free pit stops pretty much every race last season. And this season he has a 20-second penalty that he needs to take on. Life comes at you fast, eh? It really does. But yeah, really and truly, I think there are consequences to our actions, and he's gone pretty much consequence free for a very long time. Let's be honest, he has. In the sense that, yes, he's had penalties, but I think it's more so like he's done some egregious stuff and he's been able to get away with it because that's just racing. And I don't know if it is the starting change or if people are just like fed up with the dangerous driving, because that's the thing though. If one driver does this and keeps getting away with it, what's to stop other drivers from doing it as well too? Obviously the difference is those drivers will get penalties, but like I would just be like, I'm appealing this because precedent. It's right there. You guys let this driver do it time and time again. You can't just change the rules now that I'm doing it. No. If you're gonna hold me accountable, you have to hold the other one accountable too. But yeah, deservedly so. What gagged me the most about Max though is he knew he wasn't going to win this race. Let's be so for real. Max was never going to win this race. He knew he wasn't going to win this race. He did what he needed to do. And that's the mentality of a championship winning driver. He did what he needed to do. He's like, if I'm not going to win this race, then Lando Norris sure as hell is not going to win this race either. And guess what? Lando Norris didn't win the race. Max is like, I'm going to hold him back as much as I can. I'm going to do whatever I can to cause damage to his chances of winning. And let's be real. If Max didn't do what he did, I don't know. I have thoughts on about if Lando would have won this race or not, but he definitely would have brought a bigger fight to the Ferraris and he had the opportunity to do so. And I'll talk more about that when I talk about signs. But yeah, P6 for Max. It is what it is. What can you do? I will have to say though, after he came out of his pits, he went P15 to P6. I think he did good damage limitation. I do think he did that. I think he's good for that. And he knows he's down in the dumps. He's pretty good at getting himself a good amount of numbers. Yes, Lando gained a great advantage over Max this weekend, but I just think the job was done for Max. Let's be real. It was done. And Lando also didn't get fastest lap, so that's another point he lost out on. Now, P5 and P4. Mercedes, I mean, they were kind of just in their own little Mercedes world this weekend. They let the boys race against each other. That was a 10-lap battle between Mercedes. So as we know, at the first turn, Lewis Hamilton did gain a position ahead of George Russell. So he went from P6 to P5, if I'm correct. And then Russell gained back that position on lap 15. And up until, gosh, I can't even remember what lap it was. I actually can't. I feel like I don't want to say it was lap 62, but it could have been. Anyway, it was nice to see clean racing between teammates. It was nice to see both of those two put their best foot forward. Of course, Lewis Hamilton ended up gaining that position back. Of course, George Russell did have damage to his front wing, so we don't know. We don't know what could have been if he didn't have damage, but I do think that it was a nice, clean battle between the two Mercedes. I really don't have much to say about Mercedes this week just because they were really nowhere. And what I do have to say is, how bad is that Red Bull that Lewis Hamilton and George Russell were going back and forth, fighting each other, and Max still was not able to gain anything on them? Like, they were able to do what they did for 10 laps without even worrying about Max Verstappen catching up. That's all I'm going to say about that. That is all I'm going to say about that. Let's go on to P3, Charlie Leclerc. He went from the King of Austin last weekend to, man, I don't know what happened to him this weekend. It just wasn't a good time for him. I mean, he still finished on the podium, but he really messed his own race up, let's be honest. Like, he made mistakes that didn't need to be made. I mean, Lando Norris also does that sometimes too, in my opinion. But I think we're just so more used to seeing it with Charles because Charles has been in the front, one of the front runners for a while now. So we're more so used to seeing these mistakes happen with him. But what the heck? I do. Lando was always going to catch up to Charles. He was always going to get P2. I think Charles just made it easy by going off, Luck, he saved himself though. There's that. He did save himself, but it just is unnecessary little things. And if you're gonna have a title contending car next year, you have to just not. And we know how great of a driver Charles is. We do know he's a great driver, but like, come on, dude, let's get it together. Because I like Charles. I think he's a good driver, and I do want to see him succeed. But you just can't be dropping the ball like that. You really can't. That's just it. And then P2, we have Lando Norris. I feel like my thing with Lando Norris is I need him to start being mean. Because I know he has a mean streak in him. I know he has a mean little thing in his body. I know he does. And I need him to start using that. Because you can't fool me. He keeps saying I have a lot of respect for Max. Stop. Stop saying you have a lot of respect for Max. Because you know what? Max does not have a lot of respect for you. He doesn't. If he did, he wouldn't be pulling the moves. I mean, to be fair, Max doesn't have a lot of respect for anyone when he's racing them. But, like, you gotta stop saying that and start fighting back, but, like, in a good way, Yeah, Lando was pretty happy with his race today. He was really happy with his race results. He was happy that he held his own, which I will give him that because it's easy to, like, want to fight back when you have a driver like Max who's just on you and does not care about who he takes out. And I think Lando actually held it together really well to make sure that he finished this race and got the points that he needed to do. But I need you to start being a bit more mean to Max Verstappen. Thanks. What's really funny to me about this race is Carlos Sainz won. And not funny in a bad way, funny in a good way because he went into this weekend saying he was going to win this race, and guess what? He won this race. Now, I think he was just locked in this weekend. I feel like when Carlos Sainz is locked in, you can't touch him. Honestly, because I do think his racecraft and his mentality is really good. When they were asking him to box and he was like, one more lap. In my head, I was like, no, I'm glad Ferrari stood 10 toes down and not letting him to do one more lap when he needed to box because I think that could have been the catalyst for his race because anything can happen. Anything can happen and one wrong decision could have screwed you entirely. So I'm glad Ferrari stood 10 toes down in their decision. They were like, no, you're boxing because that honestly won him the race. I also think Carlos Sainz, no matter what happened today, he was going to win the race. He was just locked and loaded. He had a great weekend from start to finish, and there was nothing stopping him from winning the race. Even if Lando had more laps, because he did gain that position ahead of Charles, I don't think Carlos Sainz does not give up a race win. If he sniffs it, he's not giving it up easy. Like, it would have been a fight for Lando, and that would have made Charles then, in respect, catch back up. So I do not think there was in any way, no matter how fast that McLaren was, that Lando was going to win that race. And I'm standing 10 toes down on that. I actually don't think Lando was going to win that race because Carlos he already envisioned the race win. Let's be real. He was like, this is mine. This is my race to win. And he won it. And honestly, I don't have much to say about it because I think he just had a brilliant race and a brilliant weekend throughout. And it's funny to see the discourse about Sainz whenever he wins or whenever he has a really good race because everyone's like, oh, it's so heartbreaking he's going to a Williams, la-di-da-di-da. I'm just like, to be fair, he's the one who believes in the Williams' dream. I mean, Sauber is also nowhere, but clearly he had connections to Sauber, and Sauber, there's so much good things happening about that Sauber camp, and he was like, no, I mean, to be fair, why would he go back to a team where Mattia Binotto is there? Fair enough. I don't feel like they have good blood over there, those two. But he believed in that Williams dream. And I feel like there was a Red Bull option for him at some point too. I feel like he had options and there's something at Williams that's pulling him. I think it's an easy out also if something better does come along for 2026. But he chose Williams and that's all I'm going to say about that. Obviously, he wouldn't want to leave Ferrari. Of course not. Who wants to leave Ferrari, right? But I think what I have to say about Sainz is it's just so funny that discourse. Oh, I haven't heard the discourse of Ferrari chose to fire the wrong driver in a while. And I'm just like, how many times do we have to go through this? Ferrari is never going to let go of Charles Leclerc. No matter what you think about Leclerc, they're never going to let go of him. And Ferrari is always going to take Hamilton over Carlos Sainz any day. Now, there's a lot of conversation that I've seen about people saying Hamilton's not in his prime anymore and they would choose current Sainz over current Hamilton. And I'm just like, I don't know if Hamilton's not in his prime anymore, and I don't know if Hamilton's not in his prime anymore, because it's an interesting conversation to have, and it doesn't make sense to me personally, just because now if we look at it, both drivers have 2 wins. Hamilton and Sainz have 2 wins under their belt this season. And I'm just like, what are we comparing? If you're going to compare anything, you need to compare Charles v. Carlos and go from there, because the conversation is not Hamilton. The conversation is Charles. As we know, Ferrari's never gonna get rid of Charles, not anytime soon, that's for sure. But look at the racecraft between those two and do what you will from that. And I'm not implying anything, by the way. I'm not implying anything, because I think they're both brilliant drivers. But that conversation point that I've seen a lot about that is just, to me, I don't think Hamilton has anything to prove. I think he's done more than enough in his career to prove that he deserves that Ferrari seat and that Ferrari made the right choice. I don't think he has anything to prove. I think we've seen in this year, even though he's been completely unhappy with that car, I think we've seen him completely take the cake when it came to races that mattered and races that he's won. And I don't know what I don't know what else you want from him when he's driving a car that he's driving. Like, George is a great driver, and George is also struggling in that car. You know what I mean? So I don't think Lewis Hamilton actually has anything to prove to anyone. I think next year is going to be tough. It's a new car, new team, new environment, new everything. But he's made the right decision to switch teams before. He can do it again. And I think the conversation needs to be dropped until 2025. Let's be real. The conversations between Hamilton versus Leclerc need to be dropped until 2025, because we're not even in 2025 yet. And we're having these conversations. And I'm just like, why are we fighting? Why are we screaming? Like, let the driving show you what needs to be shown, right? And then the conversation about Ferrari maybe regretting or firing the wrong driver also needs to end, because I don't think Ferrari in any world regrets who they chose to fire. I genuinely don't. I don't. I'm so sorry. And it sucks to hear when you're a fan of a specific driver and you want them to succeed. But I'm just like, if Carlos Sainz was a 7-time world champion and he was given the opportunity to go to a top team, a historic team, and then they fired another driver, would you say, oh no, they fired the wrong driver? No. Use any other driver and give him Hamilton's stats, give him Hamilton's everything. It, like, make it make sense, right? That conversation doesn't make sense, because you'd be like, yeah, of course they would keep that 7-time world champion and get rid of the other one. I'm sorry, it's the only thing that makes sense. The only ones who are like, no, you gotta go, is Mercedes, but they've also had him for 10 years, so they're like bringing something new. And I think that's where I stand on that. I hope I articulated that well, but those were my thoughts on the Mexican Grand Prix. Congratulations to Carlos Sainz. I think he raced a wonderful race today, and I think the next few races, if Ferrari keeps up the pace that they're keeping up, I think the next few races are going to be really interesting from a Carlos Sainz point of view. And I'm very annoyed already because I don't want to hear the discourse anymore. Oh my gosh. Formula One discourse actually drives me nuts. It does. That is all I have to say for today. If you like this, please feel free to like and subscribe. And for those of you who don't know, you can now listen to my content, the audio version, on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. So if you did like it, please feel free to like and subscribe, and please feel free to listen to my videos on all other platforms as well. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.